laptop, almost threw my laptop. I was like, what? Paige, what the heck? Ah! Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, Apparently Ashley, and today we're talking about Married at First Sight, Season 12, Episode 9. At this point in the season, we're 5.5 weeks away from decision day, and the couples were focused on all things related to love. So have they ever been in love before? How do they know when they're in love? Potentially falling in love with each other. And so the experts sent them cards with questions to prompt them to have these type of conversations. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the episode, and let's talk about Briana and Vincent. Vincent asked Briana how does she know when she's in love, and she said that she's typically a person who always looks for the flaws in people, and she's very judgy towards them, and she knows she's in love with somebody when she can just accept them wholeheartedly and doesn't point out their flaws anymore. And I was like, oh, that's such a cute way to know that you love somebody. It was adorable. Vincent had said that he co-signed all the things that Briana said, and he said he also knows he's in love when he can't stop thinking about that person and he just always wants to spend time with them and stuff like that. The edits played us the previews, no surprise there, because they made it look like when Vincent was talking about falling in love with Briana that she was going to be kind of hesitant about saying she loves him, but no, she said I love you to him in the episode, and it really caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting that. And then he said it back, and they had this really cute moment, and it was just adorable. So they are, well, from that scene, they were on the up and up. Some more cute moments did follow. Vincent ended up buying her a bike. On their wedding day, she mentioned that she wants to own a bike because Vincent was saying that he likes to be outdoors and he rides his bike all the time. And she was like, oh, I want a bike. And he was like, oh, you do? And so he showed up at the house with a bike. And so I guess that'll be part of their little weekend days and stuff like that. So that was adorable. And he's also going to help her with her Spanish. He will write 4 Spanish words a day on this blackboard, and then help her to learn the language so that she can fit in more comfortably with his family. So again, adorable is the word of the week for them. But what was not so adorable was Vincent's attitude when they went salsa dancing later in the episode. So Briana planned a date for them to go salsa dancing. They had an instructor there teaching them the steps and stuff. They were struggling a little bit. Let me tell you, that instructor was not very beginner friendly. He was not breaking it down enough to them, but that's neither here nor there. So they were struggling a little bit, and in the confessionals, Vincent kept saying if she would have, I can't say it right, but bachata, if she would have taken me to do that, then I would have been better. But I'm not really good at salsa dancing. He was just getting frustrated. He did mention the word embarrassed again, and remember what we said about Vincent being embarrassed because the whole champagne thing, he didn't like that. And so as soon as he said that, I was like, uh-oh. And so they continued on with the class, and at the end, Briana was like, oh, that was fun. How'd you like it? And Vincent was just kind of it was all right. It was all right. And then they were sitting down. They kept talking about the class, and Vincent, you could tell his whole mood was just gone. The vibe was not there. And Briana was like, are you okay? And he was like, no. And she was like, oh. And they didn't have they didn't show the conversation, but I assume the conversation will continue in next week's episode. But that's clearly a thing for him, that he does not like to be seen in this light of him not having it together or being embarrassed and stuff like that. I'm interested to see how that conversation will develop. But other than that incident, they are doing well as a couple, I feel like. So yeah, we'll see what will happen next week. All right, on to Clara and Ryan. So Clara and Ryan had a cute little date at a pottery place. They went to go make some pottery because Clara loves to craft, and they were talking about where her craft materials would go in their house. And Ryan was like, well, obviously they're gonna go in the garage. What? Where else would they go? And Clara was offended because she was like, I know that Ryan is committed to this relationship, but I'm not sure if he's all the way there because crafting is really important to me, and he just wants to put my stuff in the garage. And I'm like, girl, have you seen his house? His house ain't that big. I don't know where it's gonna fit. Maybe in their next house you can have a whole crafting room, but the garage sounds like a good place in the current house if y'all even move into his place. So that was that whole thing. Also, when they were doing pottery, Ryan was like, I'm a perfectionist and this mug will be perfect or it is going in the garbage. They also talked about their schedules because Claire's a flight attendant, and they talked about how she's gone, well, pre-COVID, she was gone about once a week, and typically she only had like 1 weekend off a month. So in the confessionals, Ryan was saying how, like, you know, their schedules are definitely going to be something that's a hurdle for their relationship and something that they're going to have to learn how to navigate. So when they received the questions about falling in love and stuff, Clara was talking about how being in love to her is like listening to her and showing her that you listen to her, I should say. For example, like, she doesn't like onions, so if Ryan is making something, making sure that onions aren't in the dish because she doesn't like those, and things like that. And so Ryan paid attention to her saying that, and he took her on a donut dinner date. At this donut dinner date, that is a tongue twister. At this donut dinner date, Ryan took this opportunity to open up to Clara, because he was saying how it takes a lot of patience and understanding to really get to know him as an individual and for him to be vulnerable and open up. And so he was opening up to her about like motivation in life, like what motivates him to keep going. And he asked her, like, do you have a motivation or a purpose for you to wake up every day? And she was just like, I've honestly never really thought about that before. He was just saying, like, you know, he's very goal oriented, and there's a bigger reason why he's here on earth and like why he's motivated to wake up. Clara, her response was from left field. She was just like, I feel like I'm at a motivational seminar, like free donuts if you sign up for this seminar. And she's like, I've never thought about this stuff before. And she seemed really offended. It was wild, because you would have thought that Ryan was trying to like push this way of thinking onto her, or he was judging her that she's never thought about this, but he was just telling her his story and his perspective on life. And she responded as if he was coming at her, you know what I'm saying? Which clearly that hit something in her, because she probably felt like she should be thinking those things. I think her response will cause him to shut down in some type of way, because that was his way of trying to be vulnerable, and her response was not the greatest, in my opinion. Like, when I was watching, I literally was like, that was so mean. Like, why would you respond that way to him? I think the tension is going to continue on to next week's episode, because all the couples are going to meet with Dr. Viviana, who is like the sex expert, and Clara is going to voice her sexual frustration, and we're going to see how Ryan responds to that. Next up is Virginia and Erik, and y'all, they are weird. I don't know how I feel about them. I feel like on decision day, they're both going to say yes, and I'm going to be like, you know what? If you like it, I love it. So let's go for it. So Erik took his first flight since being married. So he was gone for, I think, about a week. They went to go play golf or something like that after he came back. And let me tell y'all what Virginia had the nerve to say to Erik, because Erik was like, so how was it with me being gone? And Virginia said, well, I wish you would have texted me a little more. And I was like, girl, aren't you the same one who was like, she didn't want someone checking up on her or having to check in and all this other kind of stuff? Erik had said, like, well, that's just part of the job. And Virginia said that she just wasn't expecting that. It sounds like it just needed to be a conversation on like expectations for when he is gone during those weeks, because I think that was a fair assumption for her to make, that like, oh, he wants me to check in with him when I'm away, so he's going to check in with me when he's away. But like, clearly that did not happen that way. So I think a conversation will be an easy fix to all of that. But I just thought that was very interesting. I think stuff like that is important to be talked about, though, because you can't just assume that somebody knows how you want to be communicated with, whether it's just throughout the day or when you're on a trip or whatever it is. For example, with me and my boyfriend Steven, can we insert a picture? Ding. So with us, whenever we're like gone for a weekend away from each other or something like that, it was a conversation of like, hey, I would like for us to talk before we go to bed at the end of each day when we're gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't necessarily have to talk all day or every hour or anything else like that, but I wanted the conversation to be had that like, I want to hear your voice at least once, and that one time I would prefer for it to be at night, because I can't just assume that like, yeah, we might text all day when we're at work and things like that, but I can't assume that that's going to transfer over to when we're away from each other for a weekend or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So I do think those kind of things are important to be talked about so that everyone's on the same page and that we're not just moving through this relationship with assumptions and expectations that will be unmet, you know? So when they sat down and talked about love, Erik talked about how since he's been single these past 3 years, that he has compared the people that he's dated to his ex-wife. And so that's why he's been single, because nobody can meet the criteria that he has for them. And I guess he's using his ex-wife as the barometer for that. And that gave Virginia some anxiety, because she was like, well, I want you to love me for me. Like, I don't want you to be comparing me to your ex-wife and me feeling pressure to have to live up to her. Erik was saying, well, they're not together anymore, and he knows that like there is more out there, and that's why he wanted to do this process, because he, like, while he was in love with his ex-wife or loved her or whatever, there is more that he knows he can get from a relationship, and so that's why he went through with this process. He also talked about how he puts his parents' marriage on a pedestal, essentially, and he wants his marriage to be the same way that theirs is. And he used the word perfection. He was like, my parents have been married for almost 40 years or over 40 years, and their marriage is basically perfect. My first thought was like, that's your perception of their marriage. Like, I wonder how much insight he actually has into their marriage, because they could just be shielding him from all the things that they've went through being together 40 years. Like, I know they've gone through something, but he could just be seeing all the sunshine and butterflies of it. You know what I'm saying? And so he's just like, mom and dad are great. Mom and dad are perfect. So I want me and my wife to be perfect as well. You know what I'm saying? And so I just thought that's kind of like an unfair expectation to have for somebody, that you want this marriage to be just like your parents when you possibly don't even know everything that they've went through, you know? While Virginia is worried about having to live up to his ex-wife's expectations, Erik is worried about why Virginia even started this process. He keeps bringing that up, like, you realize this is a marriage, right? Like, talking to her all like condescending and stuff. And I'm like, this girl knows it's a marriage, like it's married at first sight. It could be debatable because of the way she be acting, but still, I don't like how he be talking to her. Virginia talked about how she typically runs away from situations really fast. Like, she has a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection. And she was like, yeah, last week I would have ran away by now, but you know, I'm still here. I'm glad we're talking and all this stuff. And so Erik is just wanting to make sure that like Virginia is in this for the right reasons, which by the end of the episode, I guess they were on the same page, because they both said that they love each other, which again was weird to me. They are just weird. That's their word for the episode. Erik said it first, and then Virginia said it back. This was after he serenaded her by playing a song on the guitar. So in the words of Erik, they're doing really well, really amazing. However, in the sneak peek for next week, Erik went back to his it's either my way or the highway type of speaking, because they were talking to Dr. Viviana, and he was like, I don't even know if Virginia wants kids. Like, if she doesn't want them, then I'm done. And the way the edit was, like, you saw Dr. Viviana's face and she was like, whoa. And I'm like, you cannot talk to her like that. Like, there has to be some room for conversation for stuff. You know what I'm saying? Another conversation that was interesting that was had during the episode was between Virginia and Haley. So they were getting a tour of Jacob's house. Remember his beach and his pool that he's so in love with? So they were in the house talking, and Haley asked Virginia how the relationship is going, and Virginia had said, like, you know, we're doing well. I was a little butthurt because when he got back, I had organized the pantry, did all the laundry, cleaned up, and he didn't really notice. And she was, I guess she had a little attitude, and he asked her, you know, like, what's going on? And she was just like, oh yeah, my feelings are just hurt because like I did all this stuff and you didn't notice. So my initial thoughts when I heard that was, and I'll speak for myself. So in my head, it is ideal that like you meet somebody and you just want them to read your mind, and you just want them to know all the things that you like, all the things that you hate, all the ways that you want to be surprised and all this stuff. But that's not reality. Like, you have to verbalize these things in order for this person to know those things about you. Is that the most romantic thing to do? Absolutely not. But if you want what you want out of this relationship, that's what you have to do. Example, with me and Steven, before we were about to celebrate our first Valentine's Day together, I had asked him, like, what are his thoughts and feelings on Valentine's Day, like how does he typically like to celebrate. He had said like he doesn't really like the concept of flowers because, you know, he buys flowers and they just die, and so kind of like what's the point, right? And I was like, okay, I understand that, understandable. However, I like flowers. And so I would appreciate if I receive flowers on Valentine's Day. I also appreciate flowers any other random day, right? Was that a romantic conversation? No, because ideally you would just want someone to just be like, it's Valentine's Day, I'm gonna buy you flowers. Or hey, it's Tuesday, I'm gonna buy you flowers. Or oh, you're having a bad day, I'm gonna buy you flowers. And so after that conversation, now those things do happen. And so it's like we had to have this not romantic conversation to get to the romantic gestures. You know what I mean? So now if I do have a bad day, I might come home and there's flowers on the counter because he knows I like that. Now for this past Valentine's Day, I didn't have to express like, oh, I would like some flowers, because he already knew because we had that conversation. So I say all this to say that you have to verbalize your wants in the relationship so that those wants can be met, and you can't just expect someone to meet those wants when you didn't even express them. So typically, y'all know Chris and Paige is the highlight of the show, right? Well, in my opinion, Haley and Jacob was kind of the highlight of this episode because they was going through some stuff. So Jacob asked Haley, are you physically attracted to me? And Haley was like, no. But she was just like, I don't really know yet. And so Jacob was like, well, I don't really know how we're going to build a connection or make this work if physical attraction isn't even there. And so Haley is telling her friends this story. And they were like, well, are you attracted to him? Like, do you think you can make this work without being physically attracted to him? And I was like, girl, no. Like, it's not gonna work. He's not unattractive, but I don't know if I'm attracted to him. And she was like, I just think he's quirky and he's nice. And I'm like, we all know what you're nice means when we're describing somebody. She decided like, well, let me just buy him some new clothes because maybe that'll help my attraction to him, right? She must have thought that everything was gonna be fine and dandy after that. However, it wasn't, because they sat down and Jacob was like, so are we gonna continue the conversation from last night when you said you weren't attracted to me? And she was like, oh. You could tell that she does not want to have these uncomfortable conversations. He was like, yeah, I tried to talk to you last night, but you were gone all night. And apparently Haley went to go hang out with Paige, and she left around like 8:30, and the clip they showed, her and Paige were still together at like midnight. And Jacob was like, yeah, I wanted to talk to you some more last night. And Haley was like, well, I didn't know that. Like, how was I supposed to know that you wanted me to come home and talk? And Jacob was like, I'm sitting here in this apartment not going anywhere because I'm trying to get to know you. And so I thought you would be doing the same thing. And she was like, well, why didn't you say something? And he said, well, I sent you a text around 11 and I didn't think that you were just going to stay out all night. And she's like, well, how could I expect to know what you wanted if you didn't say that? Like, you need to verbalize it. And didn't I just say a whole spiel about verbalizing what you want? Anyway, so Jacob was just like, you know what? I'm too old for this. He didn't say this, but this was the vibe I was getting. He was just like, either we're going to just build a friendship and then we're going to get divorced at the end of this, or we're going to be vulnerable with each other and make this work. So which one is it? And I understand Haley has commitment issues according to her friends, but I still believe she just does not like him. Like, it is different from I have my guards up and I'm defensive because I have trust issues or commitment issues, but I do like you and I want to do this, versus I don't like you, so I'm just gonna use these guards being up as a excuse to not have to get closer to you. And I think it's the latter. She does not like him. I'm sticking to it, and that's what I say. At the end of the episode, they did go on a date, and in her confessional, Haley was saying that she is having a different perspective and a different outlook on this whole marriage, and they were having some good conversation. You could tell that she was trying, but I don't care. She don't like him. She's going to try for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, but it's not going to last. And in their sneak peek, Dr. Viviana asked, was there physical attraction between them? And the camera goes straight to Haley, and she has that weird look on her face where she's just like, oh, I don't want to answer this, because she does not like him. She's not attracted to him. That's why. So Chris and Paige. So Paige met with Pastor Dwight, who is one of Chris's friends / pastors. Apparently he reached out to Paige. He was telling her that he didn't think that Chris was ready for this whole experiment in the first place because of Chris's past relationships. And Paige was like, ooh, tell me more. What do you mean? And Pastor Dwight told us that Chris has been engaged before Mercedes. Let me remind you, Mercedes is the ex-fiance who is also the mother of his child, and Chris was engaged before her. And so this was news to everybody. And so Pastor Dwight was like, yeah, like just because of his past relationships, I didn't think he was ready for something like this. And he mentioned a scripture that talked about a man being double-minded and how be wary of a man who his yeses aren't his yeses and his no's aren't his no's. Basically a man who's like kind of flip-floppy. At least that's what I got from it. And so Paige was saying how this marriage does not serve her anymore and that she is done with him. Like she's going to move on. And she was talking to the rest of the wives at Jacob's house. They had a little get together, and she had mentioned that Chris reached out to her and he wanted to talk to her just one-on-one. Me, and I'm sure every other viewer, was like, why are y'all still communicating with each other? And so they sat down, and Paige was with it. She was just like, well, she wasn't with it. They sat down, and Paige was like, I'm not here for this. She was like, what do you want, Chris? Like, what are we trying to talk about? And she was like, you're wasting my time. You wasting your time. Like, I'm about to go. And so she got up to leave. She went over to the producers, and this is where it took a turn. She was talking to the producers and saying that she is about to leave, and they were like, okay, go over there and tell him not to contact you anymore. And that is where she messed up, because she sat back down, and Chris starts going off on this tangent again about how he doesn't want someone else raising his kid, and he doesn't want to be cut off from the child's life, and he feels like he's making the wrong decision, trying to make the right decision, and blah, 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 all this stuff that nobody cares about. And so then he was like, you know what, Paige, well, what do you want? And Paige was like, well, I wanted you to give us a chance. And I think that we should just have a fresh start and a reset button after everything that transpired. And I was sitting there like, no, she's not about to say what I think she's about to say. And Chris was like, I agree. I think we should just reset. And you know what they did? They shook hands and they reintroduced themselves to each other. And I almost threw my laptop. I was like, what? Paige, what the heck? Ah! It was so frustrating to watch them do that. Like, I understand in real life that it is difficult to leave situations like that. Like, people can tell you to leave all they want, but it's way harder than we know when you're actually in it, right? However, as a viewer, I'm over them. I don't care. I don't want to see anything about them anymore. Let's just focus on the 4 remaining couples and they can go away. Also, Chris was talking about, I'm never going to speak to Pastor Dwight ever again because he should have told me that he was going to meet with Paige, and he should be on my side because he was on my side of the wedding and not Paige's side. And I was like, you know what you sound like, Chris? A man-child. That's what you sound like. You're just whiny. Like, you just want no one to hold you accountable for anything, and you want people to be loyal to you to a fault. It was annoying. Yeah, just throw them away. I'm over them. All right, y'all, that wraps up my review of Married at First Sight, Season 12, Episode 9. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all those good things, and I will see y'all next week. Bye. 5, 4, 3. Wow.
Two joints. Go. Go. Bed.
So today's episode, worse. This episode was focused on at this point in the season, we are 5.5 weeks away from decision day, and this week the couples were focused. That it's not easy for him to be vulnerable. He wants his marriage to basically be a clone. That's not the word I'm looking for. A duplication A replication? Replica. He wants his marriage